What's going on, motivators? We got another video. Let's talk about Vice President J.D. Vance with Iran talking about a ceasefire in the Middle East. Let's get into this.
This is normal. This is what's happened in the last round of negotiations. My guess is the Pakistani prime minister is going back and forth. The Omani prime minister did this in the last two talks. It didn't go very well the last two times. It both ended in surprise U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran. So the Iranians are very skeptical. And then I'm hearing from analysts, and our colleague in the field is hearing too, the Iranians are very confident. They're going to push a very hard line here. They want to retain control of the Strait of Hormuz, and they're pushing for all fighting in Lebanon to stop immediately.
Well, Trump said already, there's no control of the Straits of Hormuz. If they do, that's kind of like a win if they do, right? At least $2 million per every all cargo ships.
All right, we're going to continue to follow that. But David, earlier this week, you wrote something that the Iranians have sort of said in different ways a few times about negotiating with the Trump administration. You wrote, even if the Iranian government wanted to reach an agreement, it would struggle to do so. Trump has failed to clearly articulate his aims for the war to the American public, to Congress, or to the world. His demands can't be met because they change almost daily, and none of his advisors has obvious influence over him. During a press conference yesterday about the war, in which top officials spent much of the time fawning over the president, Trump declared, "I have the best plan of all, but I'm not going to tell you what my plan is," which sounds typically Trumpian, David Graham.
But again, why should the president disclose his plans to the media right now? That doesn't make sense. We don't negotiate in public. If you negotiate in public, you're going to give your adversary the upper hand. These people don't know what they're talking about.
Except it is problematic when you're actually trying to grind out an agreement.
Right. I mean, there's strategic ambiguity, and then there's a refusal to state what you actually want. It's very hard to have a negotiation if you aren't clear on what your objectives are, what your red lines are. And that's...
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. The objective, they could be behind the scene working. The media may not have to know it. We know that media has an all-time high hate for Donald Trump. So why would he divulge his plans to the media right now? He could negotiate behind the scenes with the Iranians. He's been saying that he is the entire time. The Iranian public say they are not, but obviously the signs from what Trump is saying, we could see that they're negotiating.
Where the president is going into this negotiation, he clearly went into the ceasefire without a clear idea of what he wanted, because we came out of that with conflicting accounts from both sides of what exactly had been agreed to, even as temporary.
Again, these people, from my point of view, it's like they're more pro-Iran than they are America. If America tells you something and Iran tells you another, you know Iran is the state of propaganda. Why would you take their side versus what the US is saying? A hatred for Trump is putting those people on notice.
And to go from that to a lasting agreement without clear direction from the US, I think is going to be basically impossible.
David wrote conflicting accounts. That's what happened last June. That's what happened when this war started. The Omanis told you one thing. The Iranians told us one thing. The Americans told us one thing. Is there something that comes of the idea that Kushner and Witkoff have, well, they're not really sidelined, they're there, but that J.D. Vance is in charge of this thing? J.D. Vance is upset to be the one senior person in the administration who thought this war was a bad idea.
Yes, the Iranians asked for J.D. Vance to be there. That's a big win for Iran, but it's because they view him as a skeptic of the war and not wanting this to all go forward. And then, again, these are just sort of experts talking.
Again, these people, I am not thinking about it. They are anti, right? J.D. Vance going over there has the backing of the president. He's not going to go over there and then talk about something that is totally discombobulated from the United States. They're both on the same page. So the idea of what he's saying is nonsensical.
Another sort of win for Iran. It sort of boosts their confidence. J.D. Vance also outranks every single member.
Government official.
He is an elected government official, the second most powerful, official in the United States. And on the other side, you have their Speaker of Parliament. And so there's just a cultural difference. But I'm just hearing from all these experts that all these things.
How about because everybody that is in power over there has been killed? That notion is not being made, right? That point is not being made right now. Everybody in power has been killed from 3 tiers down. So how could they send somebody who's equivalent?
Face to face to talk about Iran in opening up the Strait of Hormuz. The vice president has been warning Iran not to play with these negotiations, to take this seriously. And it comes as we enter the first weekend of that ceasefire. It's still holding, but it's fragile. Lucas Halmanson is live in Islamabad. He's there close by to where this is happening, and you're monitoring the talks. Lucas, have you heard anything? Any readout?
It's fragile too because Trump said he's not playing, and we still have all our vessels in that area, and they have been resupplied.
Yet.
Not yet, Aisha. Both sides have been pretty tight-lipped, and those talks have stretched more than 2 hours before taking a break for dinner. Vice President J.D. Vance leading the American delegation with Iran here in Islamabad. Talks mediated by Pakistan, and the U.S. goals are clear. You mentioned some of them. Open the Strait of Hormuz, end Iran's nuclear program, and end the war. You asked President Trump about opening the Strait of Hormuz yesterday.
You're not going to let them hold the strait, are you? I mean, it's international.
No, we're not going to let that. It's international water. If they're doing that, nobody knows if they're doing that, but if they're doing that, we're not going to let that happen.
And perhaps that's one of the reasons U.S. Central Command said in a statement just moments ago it dispatched a pair of U.S. Navy destroyers to transit the Strait of Hormuz earlier today. And before the talks, Vance met with Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. The president's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner are also part of the delegation here. As you mentioned, a major player brokering the talks is Pakistan's powerful army general, Asim Munir, who essentially shares power with the Prime Minister. He met the vice president when he arrived wearing a suit. He donned an army uniform when he greeted the large Iranian delegation.
All right, we all know the difference. We see the difference between Trump and Biden. He told them, like, don't charge any tolls on the Strait of Hormuz. It remains to be seen. If there's still tolls being charged down there, we're going to see what happens or what he does in the future.
Delegation led by the Speaker of the Parliament, Mohammed Galbaf, and Foreign Minister Abbas Arachi, along with his technical team for nuclear talks. Before the delegation arrived, the Speaker issued 2 ultimatums before negotiations could proceed: a ceasefire with Lebanon and the release of Iran's blocked assets. Today, Israeli jets carried out 200 strikes in Lebanon after J.D. Vance said he hoped Israel would, quote, check themselves a little bit. A short time ago, Lebanon's Prime Minister posted on X, quote, in part, I have decided to postpone my trip to the United Nations and the United States in order to follow up on the government's work from Beirut. And he was supposed to come to Washington on Tuesday, Aisha, to meet with Secretary of State Marco Rubio at the State Department and also with Israel's ambassador to the United States. Aisha?
Lucas, it is very late in Pakistan right now, past 10 o'clock. It's seeming like the VP might have to stay the night. Are you getting any indications from the White House?
There are some indications the vice president could be spending the night here, of course, for security purposes. The U.S. delegation is keeping that very close.
The indication is that it's going to go all the way into tomorrow. So it's going to be a marathon ceasefire meeting right now.
But the vice president is still here in Pakistan, and that says a lot that these talks have gone on for so much time, Aisha. So that's clearly probably an indication of a good sign on how these talks may proceed. Perhaps we could get some good news, and they could stretch into tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll see. Lucas Halmanson live for us in Islamabad. Lucas.
And you can see the difference with how the news reporting is. One, you could seem like they just hate the United States, and one is just reporting in the facts.
Thank you very much. For more on these negotiations, let's bring in House Intelligence Committee Chairman and Arkansas Congressman Rick Crawford. Chairman, thank you so much for joining us. I want to get to the talks in just a second, but at the same time, the White House alerting us, CENTCOM alerting us, that there are now 2 Navy destroyers, Navy-guided missile destroyers, conducting operations in the Strait of Hormuz. And basically, they're setting the conditions, Chairman, to clear these mines that have become such a problem for these oil tankers, these ships that are trying to go about and conduct business in international waters. This is an international.
Here's the thing. Clear the mines and we control the straits. We should control the straits. Control it so that everyone who needs oil is just a free flow moving forward. No charges. But again, the Europeans, along with Britain, you think that they will jump on this opportunity because the majority of the oil flow through theirs is coming in that area, same as China. But nobody wants it.
Straight, and yet they're afraid because there's mines all over the place. Give me your read on what CENTCOM just put out here.
Well, this is an important step in actually physically removing. This is not a political act. This is the physical act of clearing the strait, and that's going to require the EOD techs in the Navy that have the expertise to do that. So not only do we have U.S. Navy divers, EOD guys, my brothers and sisters, but also the French and the British are contributing to that effort, and that's a very positive development that they are now hands-on helping out
Okay, so it sounds like the British finally showed up, finally had the courage to do something worthwhile.
The president's attacks on NATO are some of the most reckless statements I've heard from any president about foreign policy. The president cannot take unilateral action to remove us from NATO. That is for Congress to be able to do.
Chairman, let me just ask you very point blank. If the president decides after these talks that he wants to leave NATO, would he enjoy Republican support on Capitol Hill to make that happen?
It's really too early to tell for me to be able to gauge that. I know personally, I think my perspective is I'm a little bit tired of NATO basically freeloading for the last 50 odd years.
NATO, whenever they need the United States, there's the United States, it provides the help. Something as simple, the United States just called NATO to use their airstrips, they denied it. So it's like, what is the point? Like I said, the relationship is only one way. We're the one helping, and they never help the United States. But anyway, let me know what you think. All right, motivators, if you enjoyed what you've seen and heard, please like, comment, subscribe, and share a Black veteran's perspective. Stay motivated.